Hey there, YouTube and subscribers to my channel. This is actually going to be a segment in today's podcast. And the reason I'm going to go ahead and cut a video to go along with it is this question, as you'll hear in just a minute, has to do with parasites and panfish, which I thought would be of interest to the entire YouTube subscriber base to the TSP channel, but specifically with all of the aquaponics stuff I've done lately. While I won't really talk much about how it has to do directly with aquaponics, I thought it'd be of interest to you guys as well. And it will help you even identify fish if you're collecting them from the wild that already have this problem by knowing what to look for before you cut them open, because if you cut them open, you can't put them live into your system. It doesn't work that way. So with that, we'll go ahead and start recording for the show here. And just a little intro here for YouTube guys so you know what's going on and where it came from. And if you like this is what I'm talking about when I say you probably would enjoy my podcast. And you can find the show and all the other cool stuff at tspc.co. All the cool kids are typing it into their phones. Why don't you type it in yours too? Here we go. So my segment for the day, guys, is sent to us by Jason in PA. And he says it's a question for interim expert council member Jack Spirko on fishing. So I guess I'm part of the expert council too, and I guess I am because I always do an answer on the Friday shows. Jason's a good dude, been with us a long time in our community, and wanted to help him out. And I thought this might help all of y'all out, anybody that's out there fishing or anybody that's involved with aquaponics. And here it is. Hi, Jack. I've returned to being a semi-active fisher after relocating to a rental property with a 2-acre pond. Most of my prior experiences with small saltwater fish. Recently, I've caught a number of fish, mostly panfish, sunnies, and bluegills, which during the cleaning and filleting, I've noticed parasitic worms in part of the fish flesh. 2 questions. How to handle the individual fish. Do I toss the entire fish, or do I just cut out and discard those pieces of meat? 2, pond health. Is there something I should consider for pond health, like treating my aquarium for ick, or is it just the status quo? Pond details. Approximately 2 acres, man-made, fire reserve water supply for the farm. Creek feeds in, creek flows out. Fair amount of vegetation toward late summer. Outflow side, pretty heavy plant density this year. Jason, now when I read this, I was almost 100% sure that what Jason was dealing with are something they call grubs, even though they're really not a grub. They call them black grubs and they call them yellow grubs. And I emailed him and said, hey, can you tell me what these things look like? They look like little fat pieces of rice. And basically that's what they look like. They're moving around in the fish. Now, you might think, I'm not going to eat this. If you've eaten freshwater fish, it's highly likely that you've probably eaten fish that's had these things in them. They are completely harmless to humans, and they are killed any temperature you would cook freshwater fish at. They're long gone dead. They're dead at about 130 degrees. These are things that live in birds, snails, and fish. They don't live in human beings. I wouldn't do it, but you could swallow them raw, and they can't infect you. They're not that type of the human is an insufficient host for these things. And their life cycle is they're propagated through snails, they go into fish, then they're consumed by blue herons and fisher kings and stuff like that. Those birds then defecate back into the water. The snails then pick up the eggs of the parasites. They go through the snails and into the fish and on and on and on and on. In some ways, they're kind of like aquarium people think of as ick. If you've ever caught a fish and it had something on it that looked like, especially panfish, especially like green sunfish seem to be really susceptible to this. And you see on their fins a lot of times, you'll see these little black dots. It looks like black ick. That's probably an infection by these grubs. And again, they're not grubs, but that's what everybody calls them. So that's what I'm calling them. And then they end up hatching out of that. They go into the flesh of the fish and they continue to propagate. And again, the vector between the fish and the bird is the snail. And when Jason, this is why I was pretty sure, he said lots of vegetation especially on the outside late in the year, and a creek flowing through it, which is beautiful. It's a wonderful thing to have, but you're going to have clear water. Clear water, lots of vegetation, lots of snails. So what can you do here? One, you can do just what Jason said. If you happen to catch a fish with these things, they look nasty, but there's nothing wrong with the fish at all. Nothing. I wouldn't even say like cutting the parts of the fish out. Basically, you can pick the damn things out, and there's nothing wrong with it. I know it looks disgusting, but it's just, again, most of the stuff that we're eating every day, there's some sort of parasite in it, and that's why we're cooking it. If it didn't have parasites or something in it, we wouldn't have to cook it, right? So it's just really not that concerning. Now, I still would prefer to have less of that in my fish and in my systems. So since you really can't get rid of blue herons and stuff like that, what you can really reduce the population of is the snails. And there's a fish called red ear sunfish, also known as a shell cracker. And if you put these things in your pond, not only will you have another great fish to harvest, but they will go dynamite on those snails. And if you have less snails in time, you'll have less occurrence of these worms. For those of you that are bringing fish home, this is something you may want to look for. Once they're in a fish, it's almost possible to get rid of them from that particular fish, and most of us end up with snails in our system. So we really would prefer not to bring these home. So again, if you find a fish that has obvious bumps on it, and you want to make sure you don't bring this stuff into your systems at home, don't bring those fish home. And again, I think green sunfish are the ones that I see it on the most. Even then, I wouldn't get overly worried about it. And in our aquaponics systems, we can put shell crackers, aka red ear sunfish, in there too. They're beautiful fish. And well, won't they get? Well, yeah, but once the snails are not really there in abundance anymore, what you're doing is you're breaking the life cycle. And so while it will take a while for it to clear up, you'll see the population and the effectiveness of it going down right away. And eventually it'll be almost non-existent if you have a good population of shell-eating fish in the system, because by the time the snails are big enough to kind of start entering the whole life cycle system, they're food. You'll never get rid of it 100%. It is a natural part of our aquatic ecosystems. And it is, again, probably the case if you've eaten, bass and sunfish and stuff like that your whole life, there's probably been times that you've filleted a fish, just not even seen it, especially when the fillets are thicker. If that worm's in the middle of that fillet, you fillet the fish, you throw it on ice, the worm goes to sleep, you throw it in the freezer, and freezing your fish is going to kill these things. This is not one of those persistent parasites where you have to cook the fish to 100 billion degrees and ruin it to get rid of it. Any cooking temperature and any significant freezing temperature, these things go tits up, they're done, and you don't have to really worry about them anymore. So it's just a thing that happens in fresh water. And really clear bodies of water with lots of vegetation and lots of snails are going to have a much bigger preponderance of it. So there you go. Hopefully that helps you.